As well as some welcome buffs to Dreadnoughts and Grey Hunters from yesterday's Balanced Data slate, Space Wolves have a new detachment to play with, and I've been fortunate enough to give it a very early spin on the tabletop. In this video I'll run through the army rules for Saga of the Great Wolf, taking a look at Logan's impact, the enhancements, and where they might be best placed, along with the stratagems and offer and how these might synergize with your army. At the end, we'll look a little bit more at how this detachment fared against a pretty formidable Emperor's Children force. Welcome to my mini Grimdark. So the lore for this detachment is aligned to Logan Grimnar, bringing together all of the available resources of the Space Wolves under one banner, champions and warriors looking to up their game, to show their loyalty for the Great Wolf and create new sagas in his name. To reflect this on the tabletop, something I think Games Workshop have really done well, by the way, the army isn't particularly restricted to keywords. It's similar to Saga of the Beastslayer in that you can essentially take any Adeptus Astartes units that you like, as long as they aren't from another chapter, of course, and run them without having to worry about the Space Wolves keyword too much. There are a few enhancement and stratagem exceptions that will promote players to take Space Wolves units, but you won't feel punished for taking a smattering of non-Space Wolves units to fill in gaps in the Codex supplement if you choose to. Taking a closer look at the army rule, and it's comparable to Gladius Task Force. Instead of doctrines, though, you've got hunting packs. Basically, at the start of each command phase, you can choose one of the 3 hunting packs to apply buffs to all of your Astartes units. You can only use each once, although there is a stratagem workaround, and Logan Grimnar changes this a little, as we'll see in a bit. Ultimately, though, this means in a 5-round game you can apply a hunting pack as a standard on 3 of those rounds. Because the impact on Adeptus Astartes units, not just Space Wolves units, anything you bring from Codex Space Marines will benefit from the hunting pack buffs as well. First in the list is Encircling Jaws. In the round you've applied this hunting pack, you can reroll advance and charge rolls. So this one is just great for closing the gap between your army and the enemy. Hunter's Eye gives you Adeptus Astartes units +1 to hit with their ranged weapons for the round. Remember, this is army-wide, so everything from your support tanks and dreadnoughts to your intercessors and hellblasters will benefit from this. The inclusion of this buff really promotes you to take at least some range support in your list in order to take advantage of the army rule. Last, but certainly not least, Ferocious Strike. When this hunting pack is active, every Astartes unit in your army can choose either Sustained Hits 1 or Lethal Hits when fighting. These are all relevant, easy to use and genuinely impactful buffs, though the timing of when you use them will be important as per the doctrines in Gladius, and as we'll come to. In theory, these are one-use buffs. One of the exceptions to this is if you run Logan Grimnar in your list though, which I'm going to say now I recommend you do. Having Logan in your list gives you access to Howling Onslaught. This means that once per battle you can choose a hunting pack for your army even if you've already used it, and this is actually even better than it sounds. Chances are, game to game, there's going to be a bit of a pattern in how you use your hunting packs. You'll probably use Hunter's Eye first in many matchups so you can whittle down your opponent from range before your melee troops meet them head on. It's then relatively likely that you'll be using Encircling Jaws to close the gap and get into combat. From that point, maybe from round 3 onwards, you'll likely benefit from sitting in Ferocious Strike if you could for those fighting buffs, whilst you and your opponent tear chunks out of each other. Logan would mean that you can apply Ferocious Strike to your army for a couple of turns in a row to hopefully give your units an edge in combat. I think Saga of the Great Wolf gives you the flexibility for different foes and situations. It will require a little bit more strategy to get it right compared to Saga of the Beastlayer's blanket lethal hits, for instance. But in just one game, I really felt like I had more command over my army, again comparable to what I've always enjoyed with Gladius, I suppose. Incidentally, I didn't actually follow the order I was expecting to with the hunting packs, though I still think this is an exception to what will be the norm in the long run. I actually applied Hunter's Eye a little bit later than expected, in round 3, because I really wanted to focus down a couple of key targets with my Gladiator Lancers, and I didn't have full line of sight for them earlier on in the game, in the first couple of rounds. As expected though, I used Howling Onslaught to up my output in 2 rounds of fighting, and having the option of sustained hits or lethal hits was great across my force depending on who I was hitting. All in all, I really like the army rule, and the fact that it isn't restricted to Space Wolves with a ranged buff even makes it very interesting for the lists I tend to run made up primarily of lots of Space Wolves. Melee units backed with big tank busting firepower from Codex Space Marines. Enhancement wise, you've got 3 good ones and 1 dud. That's okay, you can only take 3 anyway. Grimnar's Mark is fun and it's interesting. It's 20 points and can only be taken by an Adeptus Astartes Terminator captain. It means the usual 95 points unit is now 115 points, but they can now lead a Wolfguard Terminator unit. On the surface, this is excellent. In practice, actually, it's not quite as great as I want it to be. Here's the captain's profile. I didn't realise until the start of the battle last night that the captain was in fact going to slow down the unit a little bit. It's been a while since I've put standard Space Marines on the table. You're going to be niggled a little bit by that 5-inch move, but it's actually more of a frustration than an impactful in-game piece and consideration, to be honest. It's just worth noting and weirdly embarrassing for the captain. The datasheet isn't a 115-point leader model. Not really. The ranged weapons are laughable without AP, and the melee choices are very good, even if you do feel a little bit punished if your model happens to be sculpted with a relic weapon rather than a fist. It's the captain's abilities that are excellent, particularly for Wolfguard Terminators, and they do make up for this. First and simply, you can reroll charge rules for the unit, perfect for Wolfguard Terminators. Secondly, once per battle round, you can reduce the cost of stratagems by 1 CP when it targets the captain's unit. You'll see in a bit, there are great stratagems for Wolfguard Terminators. They often will be the target for your stratagems in this detachment. Here's the problem though. When I run Wolfguard Terminators, I run either a block of 5 or 10 with Aryak. Now this enhancement makes the captain more expensive than Aryak by 10 points, and the captain isn't as good as Aryak. So he isn't getting his spot on the team, I'm afraid. Okay, if I'm running a second unit of Wolfguard Terminators, Logan's still cheaper than the captain with this enhancement, and frankly, he's getting the job of leading the unit so that they can bodyguard him for his CP tax and the detachment's Howling Onslaught to be available as long as possible in the battle. Would I take 3 units of Terminators? I did last night because it was a 3,000 point game, but typically at 2,000 and 1,000 points, no I wouldn't. Too much wrapped up in one type of unit for me. Okay, so would I run Logan solo for the captain to take a unit? Maybe. I intend to try this, but my current instinct is that whilst I like this enhancement, I really do, I think it's fun and impactful. It hinges on you not taking 2 of the Space Wolves' strongest characters as leaders for 2 of the Space Wolves' strongest units. Still, on paper, a great enhancement. The next one is the dud, I'm afraid. Halmall forces Battleshock tests to everybody within 6 inches of the bearer with a -1 modifier. Situationally, this is in theory excellent if your opponent fails the Battleshock tests. That's just too big an if, though. Too variable to guarantee any kind of return. I suspect this is the one you take if you happen to have 15 points left with nothing to spend them on at the end of your list build. I took the other 3 enhancements over this one last night, and I don't think there was a situation where I would have benefited from my Wolf Priest having this one. Oh yeah, it's restricted to Wolf Priests as well. I feel like there's something more interesting Games Workshop could have done for a Wolf Priest only enhancement, but no matter. Chariots of the Storm is excellent for 25 points. After deployment, you can redeploy up to 3 of your units and you can pop them back into reserves if you like. Good for infiltrators, messing around, or for bait and switching your opponent with your range support or big melee threats. I redeployed my 20-strong Bloodclaws unit and one of my Lancers, and I also popped an extra unit of Terminators into reserves when I decided I wasn't happy with what I was looking at the other side of the table yesterday. It's always really useful to be able to do this. This is points well spent from my perspective. Siald's foretelling is also excellent for 25 points. It's an enhancement specific to battle leaders. Your battle leader and their unit will get the Lance trait for +1 to wound on the charge. When you think that they're already getting sustained hits 1 and rerolls of 1 to hit from the battle leader, this is an excellent additional buff to increase their output. My initial thinking is that Grimnar's Mark, Chariots of Storm, and Siald's foretelling are all very playable. I need to get my head around Grimnar's Mark a little bit more, but I think you can create a second Aryak unit that's going to plonk somewhere, dish out decent damage, soak up twice as much, and be very receptive to stratagems. It did work well last night, but again that was a 3,000 point game and I ran 3 units of Terminators. If I'm only running 1 or 2, I don't know if the Terminator Captain's going to make my lists. The other 2 though, for me, they're probably going to end up being auto takes. Siald's foretelling didn't work out last night as the unit was executed before it could utilise it, such is life, but I think going forward it could be impactful. Okay, let's move to stratagems then. Frankly, they're all really solid and they're all going to get use. The foe foreseen is Armour of Contempt with Space Wolves flavouring. It's -1 AP for incoming attacks for a unit for 1 CP. Excellent quality of life buff. Grimnar's command for 1 CP allows you to select a hunting pack for a unit instead of the one that's already active, and you can give the unit a hunting pack that's already been played. This is really good, and you'll look for options to use this most rounds where you have the CP. Fenrisian Ferocity for a CP to walk a Dreadnought or Thunderwolf cavalry units through other models or terrain. Great one for Thunderwolves in particular, I suspect. Unrelenting Hunters, advance or fall back and charge for Space Wolves units, simply fall back and charge for Stardaze units. Advance and charge for Head Takers, Wolf and Grey Hunters or Cavalry is excellent. I have the pack for +1 to wound with ranged weapons. Again, 1 CP. Battle Instincts for a D6 reactive move when you are shot at by the opposition. You only have to be selected as a target. There's no stipulation that you need to take wounds or even be hit by the ranged attack in the stratagem. These are all solid. Nothing here I don't think could be useful in one game to the next, and there's enough flexibility here for different kinds of Space Wolves armies to benefit from. Regardless of your list, there are stratagems you can utilize. This can't be said for most of the current detachments, and even Beastslayer doesn't have a resounding selection of stratagems, which is ultimately why Gladius and Stormlands tend to be coming away with better win rates, I suspect. All in all, this is a solid detachment. But before I give it the seal of approval, how did it actually play? Well, for context, I managed to wrangle a mate into a 3,000 point game to use the detachment. They'd been wanting to try the new Emperor's Children detachment too, so it felt like a good opportunity. We agreed beforehand that we'd be attempting to build competitive lists, but that we were also going to take the opportunity to try some new units that we felt would benefit from the detachments, even if we wouldn't typically take them. She's an excellent player, by the way, and has maintained a high win rate of her own in decent-sized tournaments since the Emperor's Children hit the scene. Here's my opponent's list, 3,000 points on the nose and running as Court of Phoenician. I'm not going to go through everything here since I want to keep the focus on the detachment that we're talking about today, but if you've never played against Emperor's Children, they are fast and brutal in melee, with lots of fight first, advance and charge, and fall back and charge in their armies typically, all of which is very challenging for Space Wolves. Emperor's Children typically lack durability in range support, with their best typical ranged unit being a short-ranged one in Noise Marines. Needless to say, even before I saw this list, I knew my main targets were going to be the Demon Princes with wings. They're fast and they hit really hard with mortal wounds on the charge. The standard Demon Prince isn't typically seen, but this detachment has an enhancement for them, so Lexi wanted to try it out, and it turns out it worked well, unfortunately for me. After that, the Flawless Blades led by a Lord Exultant is very scary too. Think Head Takers with paired weapons and a battle leader on performance-enhancing chems. My list is too big for the one screen, so here's just the mass of characters I took. Logan, Aryak, and the Captain all had Terminator units. Remember, this is 3,000 points. So I splashed on 2 10-strong units for Aryak and the Captain, and I ran Logan in a bodyguard unit of 5, with Stormbolters rather than shields on this occasion. I do this in Beastslayer sometimes to utilize pinning fire and keep Logan from harm early, so I wanted to do similar for this detachment. All units have an assault cannon loadout as well. I threw Sjal's foretelling on the battle leader in a unit of 6 head takers with paired weapons for Lance to make them even more dangerous on the charge. Well, that was the plan. The other battle leader went with a mob of 20 Bloodclaws, and they did some serious work. They were close to stars for the game for me. I attached a Wolf Priest to a unit of head takers with storm shields that did, thankfully, survive longer than their cousins with paired weapons did, and scored me a lot of points. At the very last minute, I gambled on Jarl with a unit of Grey Hunters. More on this. After that, just the things that haven't been mentioned already, I took a unit of utility intercessors, and they were frankly absurdly good for their cost in this game. I hate how good they were. They're so boring, so not Space Wolves. 2 units of heroic, seriously heroic Wolf Scouts in this game. Then 2 Gladiator Lancers dedicated for anti-Demon Prince and anti-Fulgrim firepower. I took the Terminators partly because I wanted to utilize the detachment and have a captain in the unit, but I also strategically needed some units that could actually survive charging into fights first melee specialists. During this particular game, I was glad to have them, and honestly, if it wasn't for Aryak and his 10 Terminators that simply refused to go down, I'd have definitely been bowled over at earlier rounds in this one. The Lancers were there for one reason and one reason alone, Demon Prince hunting. I decided from the start that if I could get line of sight on the Demon Princes, I'd be happy to spend CP or a hunting pack for the round to take even one of them out. It worked to a point. The demon prince that charged the scouts got stuck in the open when it failed to kill them all. My heroic scout then legged it, and I was able to bring in most of my available shooting to bear and kill the demon prince. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to repeat this with the other winged demon prince, and they, along with their foot-slogging comrade, proceeded to deconstruct my army one unit at a time for the rest of the battle, unfortunately. I probably should have taken a repulsor for transport and for something big to sit in the middle of the table. This was a mistake, and I think I knew it from the start. I just decided to risk it. I lost early board control to the Emperor's Children, and even though my scoring was strong in the late game, I was playing catch-up, and I could have mitigated this. If you've got them in your collection, Land Raiders would have been ideal. Finally, I thought this was a good one for Njal and the Hunters, and it really was. At one point, I actually thought this unit had won me the game before I actually sat down and did the maths properly. They move so far and can still shoot with lots of shots. And then with the CP in this detachment, you've got advance and charge. They put out a lot of attacks and they get OC 3 bodies onto objectives. Njal had a good game too. My dice rolls for his attacks were great, and I've never seen so many sustained hits in my life. Were they worth the overall cost of the unit though, after the drop in cost for the Grey Hunters? The Grey Hunters just about were. Njal sadly wasn't, I don't think. He's still too many points, despite how he buffs the unit. Alas, Njal and the Grey Hunters' heroics, not even Aryak slaying Fulgrim in the final round, could secure a win for Space Wolves. Despite a strong 2nd, 3rd and 5th round scoring, I was really let down by a poor 4th round and a slow start to the game, when my tools were just all out of position and, honestly, my opponent was much more consistent in scoring and controlling the table than I was. We both agreed that Aryak and the 10-strong unit had no place still being alive at the end of the game. I just managed to pull off an insane number of 4+ saves. Despite this result, this is an excellent detachment. It will, I predict, rival Beastslayer for win rates. It allows you to take all of your toys like Beastslayer, but the enhancements and stratagems are generally stronger. Overall, despite Wolf Touch still being the best enhancement we have available in my opinion. And the army rule is, for me, better than Beastslayer because it gives you adaptability throughout the game. This is the case without Logan, in my mind, but more so with Logan, where you can play with an extra hunting pack. It will make a difference, so I do recommend him in this detachment. The captain and the Wolfguard unit was fun, but I'm thinking unnecessary for last night, really. He wasn't good enough for 115 points. I'm still going to dabble to see if there's an alternative route to make this work, though. At this stage, I'm not confident he'll make a super combo unit video. This is a CP-heavy detachment. I was lacking by round 4, and this definitely hurt me in places. Bjorn would have been very welcome here, and his reduced points cost with buffs that he'd enjoy within this detachment, he'd be powerful for more than just a CP generation too. Overall, I think this is a marked improvement from last year's Grotmus attachment. Well done, GW. I'm really looking forward to getting some games in and giving it a whirl with other lists. Once I feel like I've got direct experience and been able to soak up indirect experience from others, I'll dive back into the detachment in the new year and we'll have a look at some list building around it as well. What do you think? Initial impressions? Any combos or ideas you've thought of that I might have missed? Thanks for watching. Keep hobbying.